Colorado heads into the weekend with no more clarity on whether the statewide stay-home order is going to be lifted next weekend. The governor says that staying home is not sustainable, but Colorado doesn't have the testing the state says we need to reopen. The state makes it perfectly clear that Guy's low sex drive does not constitute a medical emergency. Speaking of stimulus, businesses in rural Colorado wonder where their federal aid went and whether more is on the way. And with another day filled with coronavirus headlines, we kick off a new segment. What did we used to talk about? Good question. And it's next. Colorado is calling in the National Guard to nursing homes, to the 3 largest senior care facilities in our state, in order to help with testing. The governor announced that today, as he also said that every such facility must submit a plan on how it is going to deal with COVID-19 positive residents and staff. The governor also announced a new mandate today that every grocery store worker must wear a mask if they're in close contact with customers and food. We could not pry an answer out of Governor Jared Polis on whether he intends to lift the statewide stay-home order that is due to expire on April 26th.
What's more important than that is how we keep up the social distancing in this next phase. How do we make sure that we have 65%, 70%, 60%, in that range, less social interactions than we did in January and we took for granted in January. But as we get back to something that people can sustain for the weeks and months that are needed, it needs to be something that protects our health, but is also economically sustainable, meaning the Coloradans living paycheck to paycheck need to be able to buy food, make rent. We bought some time. They got the $1,200, thank goodness, $2,400 for a couple. But unless that's coming again, people need to work. And of course, psychologically and emotionally sustainable for people, so they're not, willfully violating and going out and endangering others.
Here's some encouraging news. 203 Coloradans have been discharged from the hospital in the last day. More than 1,700 Coloradans have been hospitalized since the outbreak began. 391 of the more than 9,000 people who tested positive have died. 43,000 plus Coloradans have been tested so far, though the state has not said how we will establish the widespread testing that the state's own doctors say we must have in order to reopen. Colorado's Attorney General is reminding men that a low sex drive does not constitute a medical emergency right now. And he's ordering low T clinics to stop pretending like they are essential so that they can stay open right now. This failed stimulus plan of sorts at the low T clinics prompted a letter that came in from the AG warning that those clinics must stop their elective procedures and that a man's desire to get it done does not make it an emergency. Nonprofits are really struggling these days because they rely on your donations and on government grants, and both of those are hard to come by. Our Marshall Zellinger looks at nonprofits just trying to survive.
It was the beginning of March. Coronavirus was in the back of our heads, but large groups were still meeting, like the fundraiser I hosted as a board member for Ralston House.
We provide forensic interviews, victim advocacy, and medical exams for kids who have been physically or sexually assaulted or witnessed a violent crime.
Ralston House raised $130,000 that night.
Our current donors, many of them bring friends and acquaintances to introduce them to our nonprofit. So it's not only would we have lost all the funding from that night, but we would have lost future funding from people who didn't get to know about our program.
Even with that fundraiser, Executive Director Don Mosley estimates $300,000 of his budget is in question between now and the end of the year.
It's a pretty dire situation. Nonprofits depend on individual contributions for about 70% of their total support.
Lydia McCoy from the Colorado Nonprofit Association counts 330,000 people employed by nonprofits. Many rely on in-person meetings and galas to encourage donations that fund programs and employee salaries.
Nonprofits that are able to transfer some of their programming into a virtual environment are able to do this a little bit better.
but nonprofits who depend on in-person contact to get their work done are really, really struggling.
We support kids living in one of the highest poverty communities in all of Denver.
Chris Rollerson heads up Sun Valley Youth Center, just south of the Broncos Stadium, which is replacing its in-person fundraiser with a live online auction of artwork created by the kids they serve.
We were hoping to raise $25,000, so this is going to be really expensive kid art, okay, guys?
Sun Valley is benefiting from one source of funding that's harder to get right now, and that's government grants. For one of the grants for Sun Valley, they're supposed to meet in person with kids to justify the use of that grant money. They've been told, at least for that one grant, as long as they're meeting the needs of the kids, it's a good use of the money. Other organizations are finding out that their government grants from cities and counties are just not going to come, Kyle.
Boy, I feel like a couple of weeks ago, Marshall, we were saying, for all of us who are fortunate to still be drawing paychecks right now, it's important that we pay people who depend on paychecks or regular service from us. And it just goes to show that nonprofits, too, if you donated any time during the year and you're able to do it now because you're getting paid, they could really use your help.
And I've been told that there's Giving Tuesday, which usually comes after Cyber Monday. That's being moved up to the first Tuesday in May to get people, hey, maybe you have money now, you may not have it in December. There's going to be a Giving Day in May.
Very interesting. All right. Thank you, Marshall. You have a great weekend, sir. Denver's slow slog toward finding safe, socially distanced places for people who are homeless continues. The city now says that it is going to be next week before the Denver Coliseum is ready for as many as 300 women. Men are being housed right now at the National Western Complex. The city wants to find 3,300 hotel and motel rooms for people who don't have a home but are showing symptoms or they're in one of the high-risk groups. 3,300 is what they want. City says that hotel and motel operators are not playing ball, and at this point, they have 552. Colorado's trying to accelerate the education of thousands of soon-to-be nurses. Nursing students who are about to graduate but can't get the necessary clinical rotations because of the craziness of the pandemic. So the state's issuing a 30-day waiver allowing virtual clinic work so they can get graduated, and get to work helping. This state had small businesses in small towns that were in dire straits before anybody had even heard of COVID-19. Now, the federal aid program designed to keep them afloat has run dry. And as Congress debates what to do, those small businesses are dying. Here's a new.
It's Diane Muno's third disaster in Estes Park. The recession, the floods of 2013, and now COVID-19.
2 Christmas shops called the Spruce House and the Christmas shop. And then I have women's apparel, which is the White Orchid.
Monday, a few days before the money ran out, Muno got a loan through the Paycheck Protection Program, guaranteeing her 7 employees will still get a paycheck for the next 8 weeks, even though they're closed, and her loan will be forgiven.
Everybody is getting paid full time as of Monday when I got funded.
She knows not everyone is sighing with relief.
But there are businesses out there who don't have bank relationships that weren't able to get in.
That's who Mike O'Donnell is worried about.
Sense of the Senate is that priority will be given by the SBA and Treasury to helping businesses in rural communities, helping businesses owned by women, helping businesses that are young.
He's with a nonprofit and works out on the Eastern Plains helping smaller companies secure loans, and says some of these businesses knew this was going to be a struggle.
Which, to be honest, wasn't hard to see coming.
O'Donnell says many times bigger banks were helping their customers first, leaving smaller businesses out of the loop. That's because smaller businesses often work with their local banks that are also smaller, and may not offer the more complicated Small Business Administration loans because the demand isn't there. That is, until times like now.
We've already lost, 75% of our community banks over the last 3 decades here in Colorado.
Then getting to a bank that can help is challenging.
If I'm now taking my deposits to a town, 50 miles away, I'm taking money out of my little community.
And with Congress debating a second round of funding, O'Donnell says there is a chance to fix these problems.
So because that debate is still going on, the governor, Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, and Republican Senator Cory Gardner actually all put out a unified letter asking for changes to this program, specifically setting aside more money for the smallest business, as well as businesses that are owned by minorities, veterans, and women as well. Kyle?
If folks in these small towns are not going to give up, they're going to find something in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, O'Donnell was saying that the communities have been coming together to try to set up some emergency funds, some specifically for rural businesses. But as you can imagine, the money is still tight even to that.
Yeah. All right. Anusha Roy, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. There are 2 protests planned outside the state capitol on Sunday designed to pressure Democratic Governor Jared Polis into reopening Colorado now. Organizers of both protests say that they are going to employ social distancing. One of the protests actually plans to have people remain in their cars and just drive around the Capitol, which is really smart because all the people who just get stuck in traffic going to the grocery store, well, then organizers can claim those numbers as being part of their protest as well. It's very bright. And I get it. I mean, people are frustrated right now. People feel powerless. And if protesting makes people feel powerful even for a moment, then I'm not going to argue with their speech rights. But those protests are not a plan to reopen Colorado. They're also not likely to draw a crowd large enough to even get the governor's attention. They will get media attention, though. A word about that. If Colorado can avoid the Confederate flag waving and the unhinged rants that we've seen at these protests in other states, well, then our state should be proud and call that a win. But we still need a plan. It's fine if it's not the governor's plan. Let's hear your plan. Pros and cons. A plan, not a sign, not a slogan. Economic research, public health impacts. It's what we're asking the governor for. It's what we're asking his critics for as well. Remember when there was something else to talk about other than the pandemic? Like, what were we talking about on this day last year? The students return to class tomorrow with extra security after this unprecedented community-wide school closure. Oh, society being shut down. Well, that's a downer. How about this? We found one sport in town still going on.
We started a hashtag, and it's hashtag hardcore barcore.
Sit, stay, and watch Colorado's best athlete. Next. Colorado's Democratic Senate primary has gotten lost in all the pandemic news, but tomorrow is the statewide convention where Andrew Romanoff is going to learn whether he will join the presumptive frontrunner, John Hickenlooper, on the ballot for the June primary. The convention, the assembly there is online, so everybody can stay in their PJs. We are starting a new segment tonight. Everything's all coronavirus right now, making us wonder, what did we used to talk about? 1 year ago today, the top headline in the news was an unprecedented disruption of life in Colorado. And honestly, it seems like maybe we picked the wrong day to start this segment because this is a real freaking downer. But anyway, that's what was going on a year ago, so just roll the clip. So a year ago today, we shut down hundreds of schools for the supposed search for Sol Pais. You know, she's that young woman obsessed with the Columbine shooting. She came to Colorado, bought a gun. So we closed down all schools because the police were afraid that she might show up at one of them. She was later found dead after she took her own life up near Mount Evans. A next viewer reminded me of my Facebook post about this a year ago because I was trying to find another event other than a natural disaster that had caused so many Colorado school kids to be kept home at once. My research a year ago pointed me to the flu pandemic of 1920, and here we are again.
Hey there, meteorologist Danielle Grant coming your way from my patio. We had so much snowfall behind me, a little sunshine this afternoon, that is all gone. But this morning, temperatures were cold, and once again, we were breaking records. Early this morning, 12 degrees. I know, bitterly cold, but the views were gorgeous. Frosty Flatirons out there. Thanks for sending that shot in, Marsha. Our storm system, a fast mover, now impacting New York and D.C. All eyes turn out to the southwest, where our next storm system is moving in. Tonight we have clear skies across the metro area. Overnight lows falling into the upper 20s here in the metro area, teens and 20s up in the mountains. You'll notice futurecast pretty quiet overnight, but by tomorrow morning you'll wake up to a few clouds here in Denver. The snowfall increases throughout the day up in the high country, and we'll be tracking a couple of scattered showers here in Denver. Those quickly move out, though, by late tomorrow night. Mid-50s for highs for us across the metro area. A little warmer along the eastern plains with 30s and 40s up in the high country. We'll do it all over again on Sunday and then be back in business with the 60s and a few more scattered rain showers for most of next week.
I always thought it was kind of niche and maybe a little bit nuts, and I still think it is, but it's an awful lot of fun.
Nuts is okay. We could use some of that. good news and a welcome distraction. Next. Ready for a break from all that coronavirus stuff for a minute? Today's good news is just good, mindless fun. So I present to you a dog doing parkour and the story behind it.
Does the audio sound all right for you?
Yeah, audio sounds good. How has technology changed and become more important for us?
I think it's absolutely integral for connecting with folks. My name is Ian Kramer, and behind me is my dog Blodgett. Well, I run the Instagram for my dog.
Do you mind if I ask Blodgett a couple questions?
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
Blodgett, first question. What do you guys do together?
We play, we run around, we jump on stuff, and we take a lot of naps because I'm getting to be an old dog.
Got that gap. Good job, good
We
job.
jump up over walls,
Hashtag hardcore barcore,
and we leap over rails and run along the walls. It's my favorite.
Good job, bud.
It's hashtag hardcore barcore. We've adjusted it for dog. Basically, we worked together since he was a puppy to get him trained on weaving different obstacles. So that's things like bike racks and jumping over walls, running along planters. I've worked really, really hard to make sure that, you know, anytime he's off leash, that he is on command, so he never leaves my side.
What's your best trick?
My best trick is taking a 12-hour nap.
So it's been a fun challenge and an awesome way for him to get trained for what we also do, which is a lot of mountain climbing.
Lodge, over here.
It's become a really kind of exciting and intimate way to interact with people all over the world and talk, you know, with them about their pets and what they're up to, and bring a little bit of excitement and silliness into the world.
Who's the best boy, Blodgett?
Oh, I am definitely the best boy.
That was our photojournalist Mike Grady asking those hard-hitting questions. Ian says the stay-home order has cleared out a lot of normally crowded places, like outside Union Station and the 16th Street Mall, and gives them a lot more room to explore. So we have been trying to figure out whether wild animals are doing weird stuff because us humans are also behaving differently. We asked for proof, and you delivered. That in your feedback next. So the next team is kind of bored, which is why we're on a mission to figure out if animals are doing weird stuff while us humans are behaving differently. And you guys are all about helping us with this. So Kevin sent in photos of a moose hanging out at Vail Village. Probably realized that the Patagonia was closed and then decided to move on. Kevin runs Vail Fine Wines up there and says this particular moose has been hanging around the village all week. Steve was making coffee when he gets a visitor at the back door. Says animals pass through his yard in Tabernash all the time, but this is the first time he's had one come up and check to see if somebody's inside. And take a look at this. Cougar spotted Tuesday night outside the emergency room at Estes Park Health. Chris at Estes Park News tells us there have been a lot of big cat sightings around town with more people staying home. Again, we're fascinated by this. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is collecting data, but we want your anecdotes. What are you seeing animals do right now while us humans are behaving differently? Email next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext. Hamilton asks Kyle, is the state of Colorado going to send police in to arrest grocery store workers for not wearing masks? No, they will not. They're looking for voluntary compliance. They might get a warning from the health department or something. Somebody will send out a political fundraising email telling you otherwise, but don't believe it. Jim says masks should be a two-way street. Shouldn't customers be required to wear them? They can't require customers because folks are not going to comply. I think, Jim, what we've said here is that if you're that grocery store worker looking at somebody across the way, yeah, they want that customer to be wearing a mask because that protects them. But the state knows that there's no way to mandate masks for everybody. Janice writes in to say, love your green shirt. Where can I get one? Janice, you can get one at Brooks Brothers my senior year of high school, so 2001. Probably not the answer you were looking for, but that's where you can get this particular sweater. It's a good sweater. I've had it for a long time. And Roger says, why do you still have that garbage Kyle Clark? That boy needs to die of coronavirus or be fired immediately. Every time I get a note like that, I think to myself, I wonder what that guy's family has to deal with every single day. You know what I mean? It's a reminder that a lot of folks are cooped up with other people, and it's bringing out the best in some people, and it's bringing out that in Roger. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next time.